Harmon is joining us, Leslie Coulter, Pam Williams. So we're going to give people a few minutes to trickle in. And while that's happening, I'm going to go ahead and just do some introductory remarks. Hi, everyone. My name is Effie McGlaris, and I'm the Executive Director of the Fine Chocolate Industry Association. And today we are fortunate to have the founder of the Cacao and Chocolate Summit that's taking place next month on May 25th and 26th. And before we get started with the webinar, I wanted to also announce some upcoming webinars that we have on our website. The 23rd, our friends at Cocoa Town have establishing and maintaining bonbon innovation in Ghana. Jeannie Domko from Cacao Chocolates guides viewers through the flavors of Ghana. Cacao Chocolates is a chocolatier in Ghana creating innovative bonbons and pralines using fresh local ingredients in their chocolates. And they are one of the few companies making not only chocolate bars, but also bonbons in small batches. And then after Ghana, we head to California for creating macarons, California style. Meg Ray of Miette Patisserie is going to be doing a demonstration of her process of creating California's version of the Parisian macaron using guittard chocolate. She's going to walk us through the process of how she makes it. So are you in Ecuador right now, Jenny, or are you here in the States?
I'm in the States right now.
You're in the States, okay. So back from California to the States, I want to introduce Jenny Samaniego. In 2019, Jenny created the Cacao and Chocolate Summit in Ecuador with a vision to bring cacao growers to the conversation. They were long excluded from the public stage. Cacao farmers are the foundation of the fine chocolate industry, and they have historically been left out of the spotlight. Jenny's a native of Ecuador, and she spearheaded the summit to bring all the players in the industry together, leaving nobody out of the discussion. Welcome, Jenny. And then Jody Hayden is with Grocer's Daughter Chocolate in Empire, Michigan, who I get to visit quite a bit when I'm up in Michigan. And she is a co-host of the summit and also a client of Jenny's. So welcome, ladies, to the webinar. So Jenny, I wanted to start with you and get a little background on what prompted you to start the summit and kind of how it's progressed in its time since you started it.
Sure. Well, a long story short, but
we have 55 minutes, so.
Well, I'm always trying to summarize. I don't know if I start talking, the 55 minutes would be enough.
Okay.
I'll try. Yeah, as you say before, I am originally from Ecuador, and I have been so fortunate and able to kind of come here to the United States, and through contacts of friends, I was able again to get connected into the chocolate industry. And
where did you start in the chocolate industry? Because we had a conversation over cocktails one time when you were telling me.
I know. Yes. So actually in New York, I arrived from Ecuador to Florida, and I had a friend in Florida that he had another friend in New York City, and this friend had a distribution company of specialty foods. So it was exciting because I was able to come straight from Florida to New York, and I worked with this company for over 6 months or so. And through this company, I got, of course, to the restaurants in New York. It was such a fun time and exciting because this company was distributing foie gras, caviar, and all these specialty foods. So then I get connected through them to Leal restaurant where Anthony Bourdain
Mhm.
the chef at the time. And I my background is hospitality, so one of those days I reach out to the chef in Leal, and I asked him if he has a job, in the restaurant maybe for me, and he's like, actually I have this chocolate here that supplies our chocolate, and he's sourcing mainly the cacao beans from Ecuador.
Oh.
So maybe it would be interesting for you to meet. I know he is looking for someone that speaks Spanish, and everything sounds like a good connection. So
Mhm.
that's what he did. He did the introduction for me. In The name of the company is Vintage Plantation Chocolate. The owner is Puric, so I got introduced with Puric, and you know, he immediately say, okay, you're the right person that I was looking for. And then I started working with him. I worked with him for about 5 years, and it
Mhm.
was super exciting because even being from Ecuador, I knew cacao. We have a lot of cacao. I grew actually over there going in the city, but going for vacations to my mother's town, and they
Mhm.
have cacao, oranges, cane sugar, and you just go and eat for fun. It's
You just
nothing
took it for
like,
granted. It was in your
yeah,
backyard, like an
exactly.
apple in Jody's backyard.
Exactly. So and then when I was when I started working in chocolate, I was like, this is super interesting because this is how really chocolate is made
Right.
from this cacao. Like, you just harvest, you just eat the fresh fruit over there, and then it was kind of amazing. Like, people bring it here, process it from bean to bar. I have never seen the process before until
I
that
was going to
moment.
ask, what was your chocolate tasting like as a child? Like, had you had finished product? And if so, was it the commodity mass market chocolate?
Yeah, it was a mass market. I have, like, my experiences with chocolate wasn't many.
Okay.
Ecuador it's not a country that it's a
Sounds a
much
lot.
consumer chocolate consumer. And I just remember that I have a sister, so I remember that my sister was always gifted a huge boxes of Ferrero Rocher, and
Mhm.
she will finish in one night. I was like, what are you doing? And I say, can you just hold for a couple of days? But that's the chocolate that we were exposed.
Okay.
Nestle as well, but that was mostly the brands. And I will say, like, we will not go over there to shop for a chocolate bar. It
Mhm.
was a local brand also called La Universal. Maybe that I recall it, that I used to like one of their manichos is the
Mhm.
brand, and also Galaga white chocolate, but it was like very rarely. So yeah, so kind of coming back to where I started. So after that, I really got excited because I learned about, of course, the cocoa, the industry, the processing, but what was most important for me, it was the connection that I was able to make at that point with the cacao producers. And I'm naturally a person that I love people, and I love the producers. I really enjoy, like, not only talking with producers of cocoa, but any type of producers. And personally, I feel that though they are the most important people behind any supply chain. And
Mhm.
I always say that you can have potatoes, you can have lemons, you can have cacao, you can have the trees, but if you don't have people behind it that
Right.
take care of it, so then you don't have it.
Right.
So you can industrialize, I think, certain things, but you need people to be behind it to be able to take care of anything else. So I think that's how that was always on my heart. And of course I get also in love with the chocolate making, and then tasting. I was like, this is seriously this chocolate. And little by little, learning more and more. And on 2011, actually, I created one LLC here in the States. And then, it has been evolutioning until that in 2016, I went back to Ecuador.
Mhm.
And I kind of returned, I will say, to Ecuador because I was based mostly in the States, and just wanted to kind of create all the chocolates that I always had in my mind, being able to develop a different flavor profiles from the different provinces that we have, working only with a Arriba Nacional cacao variety that Ecuador has and is well known for, the fine flavor and heirloom cacao
Mhm.
actually. And that's I think where we are right now. We have been able to build a chocolate company that supplies professionals mostly, and with our chocolate couvertures, and also we have our chocolate bars. We actually also do chocolate cover items, uh, and as well some cocoa ingredients. We are currently working with distribution here in the United States, and we also send some products as well to Europe. And that's how we have been developing, and of course understanding more and more the industry. um, Makes us realize the importance of having the attention of the cocoa producers. So in all of this role, I will always like to highlight Jody, because we have been, uh, I will say on my side, personally very fortunate to meet her since the early beginnings. And actually, Jody is one of the, beside being my friend, like, one of my motivators, because with Jody, we used to do cocoa tours before actually that I started the company in Ecuador, and they were somehow supporting on how do I start this business. So yeah, so it's a long, journey that sometimes I stand up myself and I say, "Oh my God, what are we doing?" But somehow we're here.
So when you started in the industry, you were primarily selling to people in the hospitality industry or culinary professionals. What was their understanding of chocolate or cocoa? Uh,
Right, right. So it was super interesting in one way, to be able to work with Pierrick, because Pierrick, of course, he came from Michel Cluzel,
mhm.
and he is an agronomist, and of course had a lot of background. And for me, it was very interesting to, since my early beginnings, understand the market and understand the difference between the market and what is the bean to bar.
Mhm.
So when, for example, he was supplying at that point a Leal restaurant, he was already supplying a bean to bar chocolate. So he was one of the first bean to bar, chocolate makers. I will say that, at that point, being a bean to bar, I'm talking about 14 years ago. At that point, being one of the first bean to bar makers, it was a challenge, because now, of course, we have Uncommon Cacao. Let's say that they are doing such amazing work, bringing all the cacao from different countries, and you have all that cocoa in one place. So the chocolate makers can say, okay, I want 2 bags from Colombia, I want 2 bags from India, give me 2 bags from Ecuador. But at that point, 14 years ago, if you wanted to get any cacao in a small quantity from Ecuador, it was a challenge. Like, how do you, now talking about logistics, how do you import a ton of chocolate, a ton of cacao at that point? So it is like, again, as I say, going back, it was a challenge. So I'm super happy that all those things have been able, to evolve as well. And yeah, so with this background, Vintage Plantation was already supplying to some restaurants, bakeries, and we're supplying also to Grocer's Daughter chocolate. That's how our connections happen.
Mhm.
And and of course, seeing all of it, and now analyzing the things, I see that it was a lot of um, missing information of what is a craft chocolate, or what it is a chocolate. Actually, why should I be buying this craft chocolate versus buying let's say more expensive, right, versus buying this other um, I don't know, Belgian chocolate that it comes from Belgium,
Right.
and and actually tastes better,
Mhm.
right? So how or why should I be doing this? And from there again, like 14 years so ago and until now, I can see that it's still a big gap. We still have to do a lot of communication about that, but I will say that at least there is more awareness, and there is now the Fine Chocolate Industry Association playing a big role over there. And having all the chocolatiers, chocolate makers together and sharing information more and more, I think it's helping to bring the knowledge to the people. I think everyone deserves to know what's the real chocolate, how
Right,
is it
right.
made.
And I know one time when Jody and I were having a conversation, she mentioned that like 50% of what she does when she talks to customers is education. And so I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about just kind of educating the customer, because you are in a tourist destination. You're by the Sleeping Bear Dunes, and you have a lot of people that pop into your shop that may or may not know anything about Ecuador, or that that's where you get your chocolate from.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, what Jenny is saying, like there is a huge gap in information about what US consumers know about chocolate. And, I come from specialty coffee, and I would say that fine chocolate is about 15 years behind that market. And so, we get people coming in our shop every day that have eaten chocolate since they were children, and yet they don't know if it's grown on a vine or, when we show them the fruit. And if we ever have it there for them to taste, it is just this revelation, for people to understand where chocolate comes from. And so I'm not joking when I say 50% of what we do in our shop is education, 50% of what we do is selling chocolate. And so, I think part of what we're doing with the summit, and, anytime Jenny has a great idea, I'm always following her along. It's taken me on lots of great adventures. And so, this was Jenny's idea, but it's something she and I have talked about for a long time, like a need for convening information and education. And I know personally, as a professional working in chocolate, had I not had people educating me, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. And so I really, really value being educated myself, but collaborating, bringing people to a table where we can all talk openly. And, ultimately I come from social justice world. So I'm hoping to give everybody a voice at the table ultimately. But yeah, I think Jenny's done a really great job kind of creating a summit so that we can do that.
Well, and the other thing I'm going to actually share in the chat is a recent blog post that Conexión shared on the Make Mine Fine page, where you highlighted one of the farmers. And I think one of the challenges that the consumer faces is there's no connection to a farmer. In Michigan, where you are, Jody, there's a place called the Farm Club and wineries, and you kind of get to see who's producing something that you're consuming. Because this product is grown in an area of the world that few people get to travel and see the cacao pod in its native habitat, I feel like there's more education, I guess, that needs to be done to get people to understand what's involved in the whole process of making chocolate.
Right. And like we've had pastry chefs participate in the summit, like Michael Lescones.
Yes.
And one of the things that I've noticed, like we get invited to the culinary school here often, the Great Lakes Culinary Institute, and they will spend a lot of time and money sourcing like the prime ingredients here locally, but then they get to their chocolate supply
It's
and
an
they buy
afterthought.
cheap chocolate to make their pastries. And I'm like, wait, like let's, let's talk about this. Let's educate ourselves about that. And so I think, that's what's really exciting about what we get to do in the industry and kind of this renaissance of cacao. And it's certainly something we're trying to do via the summit, is to just, create that awareness and education around fine chocolate. Everything from the plight of the farmer to, the appreciation of different, genetics and nuance, flavor nuance. I know Kathy is on the webinar right now. Kathy.
She tried to get on yesterday. She was so excited she couldn't wait.
Yeah. And so she had a really good question for Jenny about genetics. What kind of cacao does Jenny use? And yeah, I don't know how much detail we'll get into about each of our individual businesses, but I think it's worth talking a little bit more about, why Ecuador, it should be hosting this conference. They're the #1 exporter of fine cacao in the world. And there are some rare varieties of cacao in Ecuador that we need to shine a light on now before they kind of disappear or get bred in with other kind of cacao varieties. And then we lose some of that flavor, diversity, which would really be a shame for the whole industry.
Mm-hmm. And you're also both involved with the Heirloom Cacao Preservation Fund. So obviously preserving these varieties and making sure that people are continuing to grow them to keep them going is important. How does the chocolate maker find out about them, and how do they, seek them out and source them if that's something that they want? Jenny, you're on mute.
For the question is for me.
Yeah.
Sure. Do you mind actually repeating the question?
Sure. So if somebody's interested in a particular varietal, like an heirloom varietal of cacao, like how would do they work through someone like you? Do they work through HCP to help find that?
All right. I think I will say the best way will be to go directly with HCP at this point. HCP really have a beautiful database of information where all the heirloom cacaos are right now. And and of course I'm in Ecuador, and if anyone has a interest on the cacao, the heirloom cacao from Ecuador, I'm super happy to share information about it. And it's also exciting because part of I know we haven't talked yet about the agenda of the Cacao Summit, but
we can start.
Yeah, sure. And one of the topics that we're gonna be speaking in the agenda is actually presenting the beautiful job that heirloom, that HCP developed for over a year, with experts involved. And I think it's gonna be a super exciting panel because we're gonna be able to see where are and maybe how many cacao varieties are out there that we don't know yet, and what's the important also, as you say, to preserve these cacao varieties. I think is an amazing work done by HCP. I think every variety is very worth it to preserve, but mostly if it's so flavorful and such it kind of has such an impact in all the genetic bank that it can contribute to the biodiversity of the world.
Okay. And then did you want to also touch on the question that Kathy Wakefield had as far as the varietals, or do you want to, answer that one a little later? I think Jody had.
Sure. We can maybe answer a little later and continue maybe with the summit conversation to bring more information if people will like.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to, I mean, quickly answer one of Kathy's questions. She asked about experimenting with fermentation, and we do have a panel. We'll get into this more, but it's from the producer's perspective, and it's about building resilience. And I think one of the ways that we're seeing, resilience being built is experimenting with different kind of roasts and fermentation, Kathy. And so, that could be a question we pose during that panel to producers. But I do think, trying new things with fermentation is certainly one way to build resilience in the marketplace right now, to create more of a niche for your own, beans or your own chocolate. And fermentation certainly plays a role in that. So that's a quick response to Kathy's question. And Jenny, you could respond to that more too, I'm sure. But
Sure. Actually, I just read the questions.
yeah.
Sorry, I'm not good at talking and reading at the same time. But oh yeah. So I see Kathy is asking here if we are differentiating. It's attempting to differentiate our chocolate with a specialized fermentation. Well, actually, we are doing kind of some differentiated, fermentation. We don't use anything, anything added, like, because we really want to try to highlight the different flavors of, again, of the cacao beans that Ecuador has. Like, we have different provinces or different states in this case, and in the different provinces, each of the cacao beans have different profile itself. So, and actually, where we decided to work a little bit extra on our fermentation is on our virgin line, chocolate or raw line. Like, we were using really the word virgin because we really wanted, we don't believe the raw as another whole conversation, but I think people are very familiarized with the raw product. So we do a special fermentation with this one, but we haven't get anything, we haven't get into adding any additives actually in the fermentation. Is mostly trying to work more naturally with an extra post harvest process that we have added for the cacao, for our raw cacao, and in order to bring out all the flavor profiles of that chocolate. So I think that's the only thing that I will be able to say about this, and also that we work only with national cacao.
So did you want to add anything, Jody? Because I was going to ask if you wanted to just kind of go through there's a 2-day summit, and just kind of quickly go through the agenda, and then maybe kind of touch upon some of the speakers that we're going to have and the topics we're going to cover. I know at least a couple of people from FCA are speaking.
Yeah. Jenny, do you want to start?
Sure. Okay, with the agenda. All right. Yeah, well, we have, just one second. Well, first of all, as we always try to do, is we love to highlight also, the people from Ecuador, and we have joined us this year again a band of Quechua music from some friends of us. They will be opening the Cacao Summit. And then we will have, again, the theme of this year is building resilience in the Cacao and Chocolate Summit. And we will have 2 days again, May 25 and May 26. And the summit will be from 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It will start, and we have the first panel is going to be talking about the moment in the industry. So what's happening currently in the chocolate industry and also in the cacao industry. So it's going to be super interesting because we will have couple of people talking here focus only on the industry of the chocolate and also in the industry of the cacao. And we'll have the same day the market perspective on building resilience. So we will be listening from a couple of chocolatiers, chocolate makers from the market, in this case, from the States, on how is that they have been able to keep up with their businesses, what has been their experience while the crisis with COVID was happening. And then we'll have talking about the traceability and transparency report that actually was FCIA. Maybe if you could even talk more about it, I think it will be super interesting topic as well for people to know, but it's gonna be happening in this panel. It's gonna be a presentation style, and we'll have as well a moderator. So Jody, if you wanna go with the second day.
Yeah. And so the second day we'll have a panel about the climate crisis in cacao. And so we'll have some experts, talking about some of the things that are in the pipeline around climate crisis. The second panel that day is producers. So from the producers' perspective, what are they doing to build resilience? And so again, that might be where some experimentation and fermentation or even formulation might come up, but we will have some producers that are actually just talking about what they're doing at a farm level to build their own resilience in light of climate change, in light of, the pandemic and everything we've experienced these last few years. And then our final panel of the day is what Jenny already mentioned. It's the presentation of this HCP project that's been underway this year to identify some of the most rare and endangered cacao around the world. We contracted Lambert Motil from the CRC, the Cocoa Research Center in Trinidad and Tobago. He oversaw 6 research assistants to do a review of all the scientific literature out there already. And so that's phase 1, and we are just going to release that at the summit, kind of those findings. And then from there, we'll actually put together scientific expeditions along with the USDA to go to some regions and actually collect, leaf samples and genetic material from some of these cacao varieties. And some of these may not be commercialized currently, like they might be out in the middle of a forest. And so that's what we're trying to identify. And we're really excited to release Lambert's work at the summit. And so, I'm watching some of the questions come in, and I think one of the things that Jenny was thinking about when she created the summit was just how difficult it is for a brand being made at origin to enter into the US and European market. And Jenny has done it with sheer perseverance and and smarts. But it is really hard. I think there's so many chocolate brands in Latin America and Africa that are incredible. And they're all trying to reach the markets, right? Yeah. And it's hard. And so one of the things that we've done in past summits is to have people come on and just talk about the realities of, it's one thing to create the chocolate and the brand, it's another thing to sell it. And so that's our goal, I think, with the summit, is just to connect, people and have these conversations and share some of the realities of working in the fine chocolate industry. Yeah.
I have a question here I wanted to pose to you, Jody, because you obviously have a coffee industry background. And this question is from Melissa. It says, when you mentioned bringing everyone to the table, are chocolate makers in FCA opening communication with the folks in the coffee and wine industries to learn what worked and what didn't work to expedite closing the gap of knowledge and appreciation? So, you've obviously been in the coffee industry, and you have, started a coffee company and have traveled at origin and sourced beans. And so what was that experience like, and versus what you're doing now with chocolate?
Yeah, I was really lucky. I started a small coffee roasting company in 2001, and it was right when kind of the fair trade movement got going. No matter what you think about fair trade certification today, at the time, it was really driven to help farmers. And I think there's still really great applications of fair trade certification today in cocoa and coffee. But I was part of an importing cooperative. So it started with just a few of us. It grew to be over 20 roasters in the US and Canada. We pooled our money together and worked directly with small farmers. And so part of what I did at my coffee roasting company was to lead these trips, like Jenny mentioned earlier, to origins to meet with farmers. So we always got to work directly with small scale farmers. And the entire intention around that was to work with farmers who didn't already have access to the market. So, these were far flung places in Central America, South America, and Ethiopia, and Africa. And we would travel and get to meet the farmers. And it was very clear that, they've been subject to a really exploitative industry, both in coffee and chocolate all along. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody on this webinar. And so, I feel like it's our duty to make sure that we're providing, a safe space for everybody to participate in the industry. And I think we have a lot of work to do, honestly. I think Jenny and I are trying really hard to bring everybody's voice to the table. But because of connection issues, because of, all kinds of lack of access, it's really sometimes hard to get farmers, engaged and
To
involved.
stop what they're doing in the middle of the day to do a webinar.
Yeah, so honestly, it's really important to us to continue to do that. I think one of the things that's great about the summit, Jenny had this, done all along, is having simultaneous interpretation. So if we have, speakers that are Spanish speakers that don't speak English, they can tune in whatever language that works for them. But I definitely think, we want to keep getting more producer voices at the table. Yeah, and so hopefully that answers your question.
I think what one of the things that was interesting though is at the end of the question, it's like closing the gap of knowledge and appreciation. When you look at all the coffee shops that are in Traverse City that are selling, premium craft coffee, people are willing to pay $5 for that. But then like when it comes to chocolate, they're like, what? Like, how do you, help bridge that gap?
Yeah. And I think we're infants compared to coffee and wine, really. And I think, opening up this door to collaboration is so important, and just providing models of like, we should be sharing information and working together to kind of convert the people that are into commodity chocolate over to our world, rather than kind of struggling against one another, right? Because fine chocolate, it isn't an easy industry to make a lot of profit in. So it takes a while to get to the scale where you're making money. And so you have to be a savvy business person, and we do need to collaborate as an industry to support one another. And that's something I think Jenny and I also really agree on, and and feel is really important. But we have a lot to learn from those other industries, and there's so many mistakes that they have made that we can learn from. But Effie, you do a great job opening doors to coffee, and you're very involved in the slow food movement and these other industries. So yeah.
Well, I think it's important to look at markets where there are similar consumer profiles or personas. And so in the specialty food industry, whether it's cheese or fine tea or coffee, those are opportunities for craft chocolate to start having a dialogue with those consumers as well, and look for ways to add fine chocolate as part of their experience and enjoyment of products that they're already buying.
Yeah, it's very important. And I think only to touch also on Jody's point, one of the reasons also that the Cacao Summit came on board was actually, bringing together also the industry in Ecuador, because as I said before, I learned about chocolate here in the States. And of course, I knew already about the fine chocolate industry, and I see how the American worked together to be able to develop certain projects and industry. So when I returned back to Ecuador, and I went and I saw such a beautiful companies over there, and I was really hoping that we can get together and do the same thing. I say, learning more and more, and I say Ecuador has this such a very important information about cocoa, and now also the chocolate industry is being developed over there. So I say, how do we get together over here? How do we, how do we share what we know to the world, but also how do we learn from them as well?
Right.
Because it has to be, two ways here. And that's when working, Conexión works over there with 5 cacao cooperatives. And we also work with partner actually with Ricolto, this NGO that have their base in Quito. So one of these days we were talking with Jose Luis in Ricolto about the young farmer project that we have with Uoprocae cooperative. And that's when we, all of this idea came together. I say, why we don't, start doing something over here? So that's one of the other partners also that we have as the organizer of the Cacao Summit. And we work together. So the first Cacao Summit actually happened only in Ecuador. And it was amazing because we were able to indeed accomplish the goal of the summit, which was to give a voice to the cacao producers and as well to sit them together with the chocolatiers and the chocolate makers. We wanted to hear right there in the table what a producer needs from a chocolatier and what a chocolatier or chocolate maker also needs from the cocoa producer. What are the things that we had to improve from each of the sides, but what we also have to learn from each other and what we need from each other. So it was a beautiful experience. And we have people also from the government. We have experts as well talking about genetics and so on. And that's how, the Cacao Summit started and how it kept alive. It was because for COVID, I think the Cacao Summit was one of the first online events that happened on, right after COVID. And we were also thinking that we were going to keep the Cacao Summit again live in Ecuador, but as it didn't happen, so we were having a conversations and let's meet live. We were able to do it live, and it was such a beautiful experience because we were able to bring that conversations on what was the moment of COVID, what were the people doing at that point. And we again able to bring together the producers because everyone was on shock, the market side, the producer side as well, but who do we help here first, right? How do we share information that actually can be relevant for the rest, how we can learn from this? And that's how as well at this point, we have been able to keep the fourth edition on the summit. And we are with more information and really happy and excited for all the support as well for everyone in that are gonna be part of the summit this year, either as a panelist or as a speaker and sharing their experience and knowledge.
Is the registration for the summit open on the website yet?
Yeah, it's coming next week.
Next week, okay.
Yeah.
Because there was a question one of the attendees asked is how to sign up, because obviously you've sold her on the summit. So one of the other things I wanted to chat about is the summit itself is one part of what you do. Do you also have monthly presentations, or are you still doing that to kind of continue the conversation? I think you were doing that at least last year. I don't know if that's something that you still plan on doing.
Yeah, that was something that we did last year, and it were mostly hosted by Jody and myself. And even though it were really interesting, we decided to stop this year. We might do one or two more uh, again conversations during the year, but we haven't really planned for this year the conversations. It takes a lot of logistics, and
I know.
we both of us run our companies, so
Mhm.
I think we will need to create a team for next year if we want to continue doing that.
Mhm.
And
And
those
then,
summit sessions, it really was designed following the pandemic to stay connected and to share
right,
information too. So I feel like now as things are opening up and, you know, there is more events happening, that there's not a need so much for summit sessions. But like Jenny said, we still like to check in a couple times a year. So
Mhm.
be on the lookout for something down the road. But I would say, you know, in addition to the summit, we are, and Jenny mentioned this, like starting the trip again to Origin, and that information, the expedition to visit the cacao farms, is up on the summit website. And so that will begin kind of the weekend after the summit. So the 27th, for a week, we'll go out to visit some of the cacao farmers that Jenny's working with. Particularly the one where they're doing the virgin chocolate. So it's going to be a fun trip.
well, hopefully you guys will take some video while you're there, and you can share it with your friends at FCIA when you get back. Let me just check and see if we have other questions. No, I don't think we have other questions in the Q&A. Is there anything else you wanted to make sure that attendees know? And then, you know, is this focus on this summit exclusively on Ecuador, or are you looking to kind of expand the reach outside of Ecuador and involve other producers as well?
Right. So again, it started in Ecuador, and when uh, COVID happened, you know, we already did it virtually. And I'm just reading here the data. I'm sorry that we're not sharing in any PDF here, but actually you can see this in the website as well. Yeah, on 2019, the summit happened only in Ecuador. We had about 400 attendees, and on the 2020, we have the summit with the theme into a pandemic, and we have 600 attendees in 45 countries as well attending. So on 2021, we were continuing with the Cacao Summit, and it was called the theme The New Normal. And we have here double it, 1,200 attendees and 71 countries. So it's super exciting to see the evolution, the natural evolution of it. But the most that people were looking into the Cacao Summit, there as well, we were able to, you know, connect with them, and they were also contacting. So at this point, we are really trying to involve Latin America, and we have also different speakers from different countries as well.
Yeah. And I would just like to add that this is an event at no charge. And so we, you know, we support this all by, you know, our own work and then sponsorship. So if you know of someone that's interested in sponsoring the summit, reach out to us, and some of that information is on the website too. But again, yeah, no cost to attend this. And there's, you know, simultaneous interpretation, as I mentioned before too. And so, you know, Ricolto, FCIA, you've been huge supporters. Thank you. We have a couple people in the background helping us too. And so the food activist, Gina, many of you know her, Regina Roli, she's involved. So, you know, there's a team behind it, and we're really grateful to everybody.
Yeah, I don't want to forget also about United by Chocolate.
Yeah.
Esther,
Yeah.
yeah, Esther, she has been as well a great support on this, and she will be also supporting this year, and also have the support this year of Cacao Latitudes. Thanks, Effie and
Kate Cavalin.
Kate.
Yeah.
So I wanted to touch on that, because Kate is heading up the FCIA Value Chain Committee, and she and Christy Leslie are working to develop definitions for some terms in the industry. As we know, actually, you probably can speak to it way better than I can, Jody. There is a lot of fuzziness over what certain words mean. And so we're trying to define that, but also one of the biggest trends that was highlighted when we did the survey on consumers with NCA last year was consumers, especially in fine chocolate, over 70% of them value transparency and traceability, and they want to know about that when they're making their purchase decisions. And so how do we tell them that information? How do we define what traceability is? How do we define what transparency is? So Kate has really put in a lot of work into that. And she's really going to be kind of unpacking her findings for the first time in public at your event. So I'm excited to hear that.
Yeah, we're grateful that she's doing it. Kate has put in a lot of work. And I think, again, it just goes to show how young we are, you know, as an industry, that we're still developing our lexicon and agreeing
Yes.
how we talk about things. It also makes for a tremendous opportunity, you know, to be involved with this as producers and, you know, on our end as chocolatiers, that we get to help share this with the industry. And I feel like, you know, we have a duty to do that. And it's certainly part of what the summit's mission is. But we're super excited to have that, to have Kate and her, you know, panel kind of share that information for the first time in May. So yeah, and thank you, Effie, for all the work you've done on that too.
And the other thing I kind of wanted to touch upon before we wrap up is FCIA, along with Rocolto, is involved in a MOCA project in Ecuador. And one of our staff members, May Choe Paz, travels from Peru to Ecuador, and she was there last month and is doing some sensory training. And I know, and I don't know if he's on the webinar today, I know John Kehoe from Guitard has also been very involved in providing training and education for people in Ecuador. But one of the interesting things is we're going to get some samples for Jody to taste as a chocolate maker, and then John Kehoe from Guitard as the company that would buy the beans, and then May from our organization. And I hope to get the three of you, after you're done tasting them, to kind of share your notes in a blog and kind of tell what you each notice. It's always interesting to see what different people pick up when they're doing the tasting and what comes out of it. But the benefit of something like this is, again, giving feedback to the farmers of what they need to be doing, how they need to be growing things. And that's one of the interesting things. If you read the blog post on the Make Mine Fine site about Raul, he talks about the plants that grow together and how the banana and the mangoes and everything just kind of provides this really lush ecosystem for the cacao to grow. And another FCA member, Toak, just did a huge blog on regenerative cocoa. And again, really highlighting the importance of agroforestry and educating the producers on, you know, what that means and how to work with their environment to make sure that they're maximizing their revenue opportunities, but also producing a good quality product.
Thank you, Effie. I think, yeah, Ecuador really has a really great project as the world now that we know, of course, and cocoa also. I just want to answer, I think it's Kathy again, question about how from a technical perspective, how is Conexión tracking product to assure traceability during the entire cacao journey? Well, Ecuador have different type of course of ways of commercializing cocoa. We decided to go for the cooperatives model, and our cooperatives have its own bases, so small cooperatives as well. And we have defined standards with each of our cooperatives over there on the type of cacao that we want, the type of area that we want the cacao. It took us few years also to be able to establish flavor profiles. So for us, it's super important the traceability that we keep in the producer's area first. Then to be able, of course, to bring that to the factories and be able to produce the chocolate ourselves. We are a team of people that everyone has its own responsibility, and we have created standards again in each of the processes that we need to have. And we have as well set one a person that is only talking or taking care of the traceability. So that's how we do. I know it's a very important topic to touch base and to analyze, but for us, definitely being from Ecuador, talking the same language of the cacao producers, being there tasting constantly and every day the cacao beans, we can, it's easy for us to right now identify, like, hey, listen, this cacao beans is not from the same area that, we have been able to get in the other cacao beans. So what's in here, what's there, right? So, but little by little, we are still a small company, but being very serious right now. We have again a team of experts in the floor in every area, and trying to bring up all of these important challenges. And that's what's super important for us, also to create these relationships with the cacao producers. I think Conexión was one of the first companies as well that show out the faces of the cacao producers. And we are a new company indeed, but learning in the process, and we're super happy to keep taking anything that's coming up and super ready to improve and compete with the big companies out there in the world. So
And I would just say, as a buyer, we bought this business from a Danish woman who moved to the US and could not find, chocolate that she liked here. So she started importing from Purique, who Jenny mentioned at the top of this, but also from a couple South American chocolate makers that are bigger, that do couverture, and you know them, El Rey and Santander. And there's nothing wrong with those companies. They're great. But I remember calling them and saying, I want to come meet the farmers. Like, I want to know the story. It's just, how we want to operate our business. And it was really difficult. And so Jenny, I called her and I'm like, I know, that you have these connections and the same passion. Can we do chocolate together? Because I really want to know who the farmers are. And so Jenny and I started doing trips together right away. And I think Jenny, got this early on, but it was just like, we wanted to work with co-ops that would open their books to us, and we're happy to open our books to them. And so she found like these cooperatives who not only were producing super high quality cocoa at her, exact like specification, but also were great partners. And so that was really important to us. And I think that's hard to find. Of course, now there's technology that's supporting these traceability maps, and that's fantastic. And of course, adopting a technology is hard, and not all producers are ready to just jump on board with that. But I think, there's a lot coming down the road on that. But at the summit, we'll have a couple people talk about, their traceability and transparency initiatives. Uncommon Cacao has a great one, as you know. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff being tested right now in the marketplace, I should say.
Yeah,
Well,
so anything that you want to know about our producers, we're really hoping to be able to launch soon a traceability report as well on how we're working. But I think it's it's a topic that it deserves its own summit.
Yes.
well, ladies, thank you so much. We're at about the hour right now. And what I wanted to let everybody know is we are going to make this recording public on YouTube. And once you all get the recording, I encourage you to share it. I encourage you to invite your colleagues and people who you think might be interested in attending the summit. And if you have any questions, we will include Jenny and Jody's information in the email we send out with the reporting. But as Jody said, she is looking for sponsors. So definitely connect with her and Jenny if you would like to sponsor the summit. There's a lot of great work being done, and the translation services, everything that all takes money to do. So thank you all very much. I don't know if Jody or Jenny, you have any last words you want to add?
I'll leave it to Jenny.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you, first of all, Effie, for the opportunity to be able to talk about the summit. Thank you very much to every one of the organizers, Jody, Ricolto, FCIA, and MOCA, and you know, everyone that's participating on the back end, and as well, you know, the participants. So, and for everyone else, we really hope you will be able to join us and check it out, the website cacaoandchocolatesummit.com. And yeah, if it's possible and you're a chocolate lover and want to keep it forever, just thinking supporting the summit financially as well.
All right.
It.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.